The most cunning mind of the dark side steps through a tear in reality itself, finding a world where heroes wield powers unlike any he has corrupted before. In the shadows of Sokovia, Emperor Palpatine's withered hands reach out to touch the echoes of the Infinity Stones, sensing their resonance with the Force. The Avengers have faced gods and monsters, but never an enemy who feeds on fear itself, turning their own doubts against them. What happens when the architect of the Galactic Empire discovers a universe ripe for a new kind of order? The skies over Sokovia shimmered with unnatural energy. Strange, pulsating ripples of deep violet light crackled across the night, splitting the darkness like veins of lightning frozen in time. A ragged tear formed in the fabric of reality itself, widening slowly before rupturing with catastrophic force. Thunder rolled across the ruined landscape, echoing through the empty buildings that remained after Ultron's failed ascension. The air itself seemed to scream as something ancient and terrible forced its way through. Emperor Palpatine fell to the cold ground, his black robes billowing around him like smoke. Pain coursed through every fiber of his being. His last memory had been of his apprentice, Vader, lifting him high above the reactor shaft on the second Death Star, betrayal burning in those mechanical limbs as surely as the lightning had coursed from Palpatine's fingertips. The fall should have been his end. The reactor should have consumed him. Yet here he was, drawing ragged breaths in a place that felt wrong in ways he could not immediately name. He extended his senses through the Force and found nothing familiar. The galaxy felt muted, distant, as though the very nature of existence had changed, but power still flowed through him. The dark side remained his to command, though it responded differently here, moving through unfamiliar currents. He rose to his feet, yellow eyes gleaming beneath his hood, and surveyed this strange world that would soon know his dominion. Miles away, deep within a forgotten bunker, Baron Zemo looked up sharply from the ancient computer terminal, his scarred face illuminated by the sudden alerts flashing across the screen. Energy readings, unlike anything recorded since the Battle of Earth, were spiking across the Sokovian countryside. Whatever had arrived was neither Asgardian nor extraterrestrial in any pattern recognized by his extensive databases, but it radiated power. And power, Zemo knew better than most, was always worth investigating. "Sir." His remaining loyal soldier approached with caution. "The Quinjet is ready." Zemo nodded, sliding his purple mask into place. "Good. We must reach the anomaly before Stark's watchdogs realize what has happened." Little did Zemo know that halfway across the world, in the new Avengers facility, Friday was already alerting Sam Wilson to the disturbance. The new Captain America stood before the holographic display, shield strapped. To his arm, his expression grave as the energy signatures pulsed in angry red patterns. "Any match to known entities?" he asked. "Negative," Friday responded. However, the energy signature shares certain characteristics with readings taken during the Scarlet Witch's manifestations in Westview. Sam frowned. "Get the team together and contact Dr. Strange." Within the Sanctum Sanctorum, Stephen Strange had already sensed the disturbance. The very walls of reality had been breached, not by interdimensional means he recognized, but by something that operated on principles beyond even his considerable understanding. He stood before the window that overlooked New York City, the cloak of levitation settling onto his shoulders unbidden, reacting to his unease. "Wong," he called, his voice echoing through the ancient halls. "Something has entered our world." "Another demon?" Wong asked, appearing from the library, an ancient tome still in his hands. "No," Strange answered, his expression troubled. "Something worse. Something that doesn't belong in any reality I've encountered." Back in Sokovia, Palpatine had begun to explore his surroundings, his movements deliberate and calculating. This world was primitive compared to the technology of his galaxy, yet he sensed something else, something that resonated with the dark side in ways both familiar and strange. Power sources scattered across this planet, echoes of energies that reminded him of kyber crystals, but vastly more potent. He could feel them calling to him across vast distances, 6 distinct signatures that seemed to have left their mark on this reality. He came upon the ruins of what had once been a village, now abandoned, nature slowly reclaiming the crumbling structures. His fingers trailed along a stone wall, and he felt the history of this place through the Force. Violence, fear, death. This place had witnessed the birth of something powerful and terrible. The residue of that creation still lingered, and Palpatine drank it in, a thin smile spreading across his withered features. A sound behind him, movement. Palpatine turned slowly, unconcerned, to find himself facing a man in a purple mask, flanked by armed soldiers. The Emperor did not need the Force to sense the hatred radiating from this man, the carefully controlled rage that fueled his every action. How familiar that emotion felt, how useful it could be. "You are trespassing," Zemo said, his accented voice calm and measured. "This area is restricted." Palpatine smiled, a terrible sight that never reached his yellow eyes. "Restricted? I find that nothing is truly restricted to one who wields true power." He raised a gnarled hand, and lightning erupted from his fingertips, striking the soldiers flanking Zemo. They convulsed and fell, smoke rising from their tactical gear. Zemo himself rolled aside with impressive speed, drawing a pistol and firing in one fluid motion. The energy bolts from the primitive weapon never reached their target. Palpatine caught them in mid-air with the Force, the glowing projectiles hovering inches from his palm. "Interesting," he mused, studying the suspended energy. Not a blaster, yet similar principles. He closed his fist, and the energy dissipated harmlessly. Zemo narrowed his eyes behind his mask. Another enhanced individual, another potential threat to humanity that the Avengers had failed to contain. "What are you?" "I am the Emperor," Palpatine replied, his voice echoing with unnatural resonance. "And you, my masked friend, will be the first on this world to witness the true nature of the dark side." He extended his hand, and Zemo found himself lifted from the ground, an invisible force crushing his windpipe. His feet kicked uselessly in the air as Palpatine probed his mind without mercy or restraint, tearing through memories and knowledge, extracting everything of value about this world, its defenders, its power sources, and most importantly, those objects of immense power that had recently shaped its history. The Infinity Stones. As Zemo's consciousness began to fade, the sky above them split with thunder, and a figure wreathed in crackling lightning descended. Thor, god of thunder, had answered the call. His axe, Stormbreaker, hummed with energy as he took in the scene before him. "Release him," Thor commanded, his voice carrying the authority of millennia. Palpatine turned slowly, still holding Zemo aloft, and beheld the Asgardian with interest. Here was power indeed, raw and elemental, not unlike the Force but channeled through different means. "Another godling," he said, dropping Zemo unceremoniously to the ground. "Your universe seems full of them." Thor had faced many foes across the 9 realms and beyond, but something about this withered figure in black robes sent a primal chill through him. The creature before him radiated malevolence unlike anything he had encountered, a darkness that seemed to swallow light itself. "I don't know what realm you come from, Old One," Thor said, Stormbreaker held at the ready. "But you've chosen the wrong world to invade." Palpatine laughed, a sound like dry bones breaking. "Invasion? No. Consider this a transition of power." He thrust both hands forward, and force lightning erupted toward Thor in a blinding cascade. Thor raised Stormbreaker instinctively, the enchanted weapon absorbing the attack. But the Emperor's assault did not relent, and Thor found himself being pushed back, his boots digging furrows in the earth as the lightning intensified, its color shifting from blue to a sickly purple. The god of thunder roared and channeled his own lightning through Stormbreaker, meeting Palpatine's attack with Asgardian fury. The two powers collided in a cataclysmic display, the shockwave flattening the surrounding ruins and sending Zemo tumbling further away. The sky above them darkened, as if in response, clouds swirling into an unnatural cyclone centered on their battle. At the new Avengers facility, Sam Wilson watched the satellite feed with growing concern as environmental systems across Eastern Europe began to destabilize. Whatever was happening in Sokovia was affecting weather patterns across 3 countries. Friday, what's Thor's status? His communications are offline, the AI responded, but his biometrics indicate extreme exertion. Sam nodded grimly. Get me transport, and tell Strange to meet us there. In Sokovia, the battle between Sith Lord and Asgardian had reached a fever pitch. Thor, for all his godly strength, found himself facing an opponent whose power seemed to feed on the very conflict between them. Each lightning strike Thor launched was not only countered but somehow absorbed and redirected with greater intensity. Palpatine moved with unnatural speed for one who appeared so frail, his body twisting and leaping with the aid of the Force. Your lightning is impressive, Palpatine called over the roar of their clashing powers. But it lacks focus. It lacks hatred. Thor had weathered the heart of a dying star, had faced Thanos himself, but the sustained assault from this mysterious enemy was beginning to take its toll. The Emperor's lightning crawled across his armor, seeking entry, burning wherever it touched bare skin. Moreover, Thor began to feel a strange pressure in his mind, insidious whispers that spoke of doubt and failure. With a final surge of effort, Thor swung Stormbreaker in a wide arc, breaking their deadlock and launching himself toward Palpatine. The axe descended with enough force to split a mountain, but it never reached its target. Inches from the Emperor's head, it stopped as if striking an invisible barrier. The Force is strong with me, Palpatine hissed, his yellow eyes gleaming with malice. Stronger than your petty godhood. With a gesture, he sent Thor flying backward, the Asgardian crashing through several ruined buildings before coming to rest in a crater of his own making. Before Thor could regain his feet, Palpatine was upon him, hands extended, lightning pouring forth with renewed vigor. Without Stormbreaker to absorb the brunt of the attack, Thor convulsed as the dark energy coursed through him. I can taste your power, Palpatine said, his voice barely audible over the crackling energy. So similar to the Force, yet fundamentally different. I shall learn its secrets. A portal of sparking orange energy suddenly opened beside them, and Dr. Strange stepped through, his hands already weaving complex patterns in the air. That's enough, he declared, sending a whip of eldritch energy that wrapped around Palpatine's arm, disrupting his attack on Thor. The Emperor turned with a snarl, focusing his attention on this new threat. Another form of power, different again from both his own and the fallen gods. This world was a nexus of energies he had never encountered, each presenting new possibilities, new weapons for his arsenal. A sorcerer, he said, studying Strange, with predatory interest. How quaint. Strange maintained his defensive stance, the cloak of levitation billowing around him. I am Dr. Stephen Strange, master of the mystic arts and protector of this reality. You don't belong here. On the contrary, Palpatine replied, beginning to circle Strange like a predator. I believe I have found exactly where I belong. A world ripe for a new order. My order. Strange's eyes narrowed as he sensed the malevolence emanating from the figure before him. This was no ordinary extra-dimensional threat. The very reality around this being seemed distorted, as if he operated under different natural laws. Whatever you are, Strange said, whatever power you wield, this world has faced worse and survived. Has it? Palpatine smiled, revealing yellowed teeth. We shall see. He launched himself at Strange with inhuman speed, lightsaber suddenly igniting in his hand, its crimson blade humming with deadly purpose. Strange barely had time to conjure a fission, shield of magical energy before the lightsaber struck, the two powers meeting in a shower of sparks. The sorcerer's eyes widened as he felt the shield begin to give way, the lightsaber's energy somehow disrupting the very mystic forces he commanded. Strange teleported a short distance away, reassessing his opponent. Fascinating. Your weapon cuts through the fabric of dimensional energy. The lightsaber is merely a tool, Palpatine replied, twirling the blade with expert precision. The true power lies in the Force. He demonstrated by lifting several tons of rubble with a mere gesture, sending the debris hurtling toward Strange. The sorcerer countered by opening multiple small portals that redirected the projectiles away from him and back toward Palpatine. The Sith Lord destroyed them with casual flicks of his lightsaber, each impact causing the blade to hiss and flare. Thor had regained his feet by now, calling Stormbreaker back to his hand. He's stronger than he appears, Strange. His lightning, it feeds on opposition. Strange nodded, quickly formulating a strategy. Then we changed the nature of the battlefield. He began an intricate series of gestures, and the mirror dimension started to fold around them, reality fracturing into crystalline facets that reflected and multiplied around Palpatine. The Emperor paused, observing this new development with academic interest rather than concern. Your reality is malleable here, he noted, not unlike certain aspects of the Force. Before Strange could complete the spell, Palpatine thrust his hand forward, sending a pulse of Force energy that shattered the forming mirror dimension like glass. The backlash sent Strange stumbling backward, blood trickling from his nose at the unexpected resistance. The Force exists in all things, Palpatine explained, advancing slowly. Between all things. It binds reality itself. Your magic merely scratches the surface of what true mastery can accomplish. Thor attacked from behind. Stormbreaker aimed at Palpatine's back. Without turning, the Emperor sidestepped with preternatural awareness, the axe missing him by inches. In the same motion, he seized Thor with the Force and hurled him toward Strange. The two Avengers collided heavily, buying Palpatine a moment to extend his senses further, to taste the limits of this world's defenses. As he did so, he felt something extraordinary. The residue of the 6 great powers that had shaped recent events here had left their mark on reality itself. The Infinity Stones, though destroyed in this timeline, had imprinted their essence into the very fabric of existence. And through the Force, Palpatine could touch those echoes, could perhaps even manipulate them. The possibilities made his withered heart race with anticipation. The power of creation itself, waiting to be harnessed by one who understood true power, true darkness. His moment of revelation was interrupted as a Quinjet roared overhead. More of this world's defenders arriving. The Emperor decided that strategic withdrawal would serve his purposes better than prolonged combat. He had much to learn about this reality, much to master, before revealing the full extent of his ambitions. We shall continue this discussion another time, he said, releasing a Force repulse that sent Strange and Thor flying in opposite directions. Before either could recover, Palpatine had vanished into the ruins, masking his presence in the Force so completely that he might as well have ceased to exist. Strange tried to track him magically, but found nothing, as if the intruder had learned to operate between the very constructs of reality that sorcery relied upon. The Quinjet landed, and Sam Wilson emerged along with Bucky Barnes and Wanda Maximoff. They found Thor helping Strange to his feet, both looking worse for wear. "What happened?" Sam asked, taking in the devastation around them. "Who was that?" Strange shook his head, his expression grave. "I'm not certain. But whatever he is, he doesn't operate by the same natural laws as any entity I've encountered. His power, it feels fundamentally wrong in our reality, like a cancer in the multiverse itself." Thor's face was uncharacteristically somber. He called himself the Emperor and spoke of something called the dark side. His lightning was unlike any I've faced, even from my sister Hela. It seemed to grow stronger the more I resisted it. Wanda had been silent, her eyes scanning the battlefield with growing unease. "I felt him," she said quietly. "When your alert came through, it was like a scream in my mind, a presence so filled with hatred and cunning that it made Thanos feel simple by comparison." The others looked at her with concern. Since Westview, Wanda's powers had continued to evolve in ways even she didn't fully understand. If this entity had registered so strongly to her from such distance, it confirmed their worst fears. "We need to find him," Sam said, "before he hurts anyone else." As they spoke, Zemo approached, limping slightly but otherwise composed despite his near-death experience. "Captain," he acknowledged Sam with the barest nod. "It seems we share a common enemy once more." Sam's expression hardened. "What were you doing here, Zemo?" "Following the energy signature, same as you," Zemo replied smoothly. "Though I arrived somewhat earlier and received a more personal introduction to our visitor." Strange stepped forward. "What did he do to you?" Zemo's eyes took on a haunted quality despite his controlled demeanor. "He was in my mind, extracting information with brutal efficiency. He knows about the Infinity Stones now, about the Avengers, about everything that's happened since New York." A heavy silence fell over the group as the implications sank in. An enemy of immense power, armed with intimate knowledge of Earth's defenses and recent history. And somewhere out there, planning his next move. Miles away, hidden in the depths of the Sokovian forests, Emperor Palpatine sat in meditation, his consciousness expanding through the Force, mapping this new reality. He could feel the echoes of the Infinity Stones resonating through space and time, their power dispersed but not truly gone. More importantly, he could sense minds across this world that were sensitive to energies similar to the Force. Potential apprentices, potential weapons. A thin smile spread across his ravaged face. This world had never known a Sith Lord. It would learn. Oh, how it would learn. The pattern was always the same, whether in his galaxy or this one. Find those with power and turn them. Corrupt the strongest defenders. Sow doubt and fear among allies. Create systems of control that outlasted any single battle. The Empire had not been built in a day, nor had the Republic fallen quickly. Patience was the greatest weapon in his arsenal. As night deepened around him, Palpatine opened his eyes, their yellow glow illuminating the darkness. "Begin again," he whispered to the shadows. "Begin again." In the days that followed, strange occurrences were reported across the globe. People with latent psychic abilities experienced vivid nightmares of an ageless, hooded figure. Several minor energy research facilities reported break-ins where nothing was stolen but data was accessed. And in New York, Hong Kong, and London, the three sanctums of the Masters of the Mystic Arts found their protective barriers tested by subtle, probing attacks that came not from other dimensions, but from within this reality itself. Dr. Strange spent every waking hour in the New York Sanctum's library, searching ancient texts for any mention of powers that matched what he had witnessed in Sokovia. Wong assisted, their usual banter replaced by focused, grim determination. "Nothing in the Book of Cagliostro," Strange said, closing another tome with a frustrated sigh. "Nothing in the ancient records from Kamar-Taj either." "Perhaps we're looking in the wrong places," Wong suggested. "This entity doesn't seem to be from any dimension we've catalogued. What if he's from somewhere beyond the multiverse as we understand it?" Strange considered this, absently touching the scar on his chest where the time stone had once hung. A universe with different fundamental forces, different laws of reality? It would explain why his powers interact with ours in such unpredictable ways. Wong nodded. Their discussion was interrupted as the sanctum trembled, ancient artifacts rattling on their shelves. Strange was on his feet instantly, hurrying to the window that overlooked the New York skyline. What he saw made his blood run cold. A storm had gathered over the city, unnatural in its perfect circularity, and the strange, greenish lightning that pulsed within its clouds. At its center, directly above the former Avengers Tower, a vortex was forming, the clouds spiraling inward with increasing speed. "Wong," Strange called, already summoning a portal. "Alert the others. It's starting." Across the city, civilians looked up at the unnatural storm with the weary resignation of New Yorkers who had seen too many world-ending events. Some ran for shelter, others stood filming with their phones, but all felt the oppressive weight of dread that accompanied the swirling clouds. Peter Parker was among the first responders, swinging between buildings in his Spider-Man suit, Karen's voice in his ear providing atmospheric readings that made little sense. The storm is generating energy signatures similar to those recorded during Thanos' arrival, the AI informed him. But the pattern is inverted. What does that even mean? Peter asked, perching on a gargoyle to survey the situation. Unknown. Attempting to contact Dr. Strange. Below, chaos was erupting as the strange energy from the storm began to affect electronics. Cars stalled in the streets, traffic lights flickered and died, and smartphones sparked in their owners' hands. Then, more disturbing still, people began to clutch their heads in pain, some collapsing to their knees, others staring blankly upward as if receiving silent commands. In his hidden location, now a forgotten Hydra bunker beneath the city, Palpatine channeled the dark side of the Force with single-minded intensity. His days of study had revealed that the echo of the Mind Stone resonated most strongly here. In this city that had weathered so many extraordinary events, he could use that echo, amplify it through the Force, and touch thousands of minds simultaneously. For a being who had once influenced an entire galaxy through the Force, manipulating the population of a single city was well within his considerable power. Each mind he touched became another sensor, another tool, another potential vessel for his influence. And among them, he sought those special few with the potential to truly serve his purposes. Dr. Strange arrived at the epicenter of the disturbance, levitating above Stark Tower's landing pad, his hands weaving complex patterns as he attempted to dispel the unnatural storm. But this was no ordinary meteorological phenomenon, nor was it mystical in nature. The sorcerer found his spells sliding off the vortex like water from oil, unable to find purchase on energy that operated by different principles. "You cannot counter that which you do not understand, sorcerer." Palpatine's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, carried on the wind itself. Strange turned in midair, trying to locate the source, when a bolt of Force lightning struck him from behind, sending him plummeting toward the tower. The cloak of levitation caught him mere feet from impact, allowing him to roll to a defensive position as Palpatine emerged from the shadows, moving with the fluid grace of a much younger man. "Your world calls to me, Dr. Strange," the Emperor said, yellow eyes gleaming beneath his hood. "So many minds ripe for guidance, so much chaos begging for limes, order." "The last would-be conqueror who came here left in pieces," Strange replied, hands ready to weave defensive spells. "What makes you think you'll fare any better?" Palpatine smiled, a cold expression devoid of warmth. "Because I do not seek to destroy, merely to rule." With blinding speed, he closed the distance between them, lightsaber igniting in a crimson flash. Strange barely managed to conjure the shields of the Seraphim, the mystical barriers straining against the lightsaber's otherworldly energy. Each impact sent shockwaves through Strange's arms, the weapon somehow disrupting the very mystical energies he wielded. "Your magic is impressive," Palpatine acknowledged, pressing his attack with relentless precision. "But ultimately, it is just another form of energy. And all energy can be manipulated by the Force." To demonstrate, he extended his free hand, and Strange felt the mystical energies he was channeling suddenly twist as if gripped by an invisible hand. His shields flickered and destabilized, forcing him to leap backward and switch to offensive spells. He sent the crimson bands of Cyttorak snaking toward Palpatine, the binding spell racing through the air like living chains. The Emperor responded with a contemptuous gesture, catching the bands with the Force and sending them back toward Strange with increased velocity. The sorcerer opened a portal, redirecting them into empty space, but the momentary distraction was all Palpatine needed. Force lightning erupted from his fingertips, catching Strange square in the chest. The Sorcerer Supreme convulsed as the dark energy coursed through him, disrupting not only his physical form but the very mystical connections that empowered his sorcery. He fell to his knees, the cloak of levitation spasming around him as if in sympathetic agony. "I have ruled galaxies, sorcerer," Palpatine said, advancing slowly, savoring his victory. "I have orchestrated the fall of an order of warriors that dwarf your Jedi, mystic practitioners in both power and number. Did you truly believe you could stand against me alone?" Who said he was alone? The voice came from above as Iron Man descended, repulsors blazing. Tony Stark had not been seen publicly since the battle against Thanos, his survival after wielding the Infinity Gauntlet something of a miracle. Yet here he was, in a new suit that hummed with energy beyond anything he had previously designed. Palpatine turned, raising a hand to absorb the repulsor blasts with the Force. But these were not standard repulsors. The energy they emitted had been specially designed after extensive study of the power signatures from all 6 Infinity Stones. As the Emperor attempted to grasp this unfamiliar energy, it slipped through his control, striking him and sending him skidding backward across the tower's surface. "Nanotech armor, Mark LXXXV, Tony announced, landing beside Strange and helping him to his feet. "Specifically designed to handle extra-dimensional threats after our last cosmic visitor. You're looking a little under the weather there, Merlin." Strange grimaced, still shaking off the effects of the Force lightning. "He doesn't fight like anything we've encountered before. His power, it's like he can directly manipulate energy fields, including magical ones." "So I noticed," Tony replied, his faceplate retracting to reveal an expression of calculated intensity. "Friday's been analyzing his attacks. Whatever he's doing, it operates on principles similar to quantum field manipulation, but with conscious control." Palpatine had regained his footing, studying Stark with newfound interest. "The man of iron," he said. "Your technology sings with echoes of the 6 great powers that once shaped this world." "How fascinating." "Yeah, I get that a lot," Tony replied, faceplate snapping back into place. "Now, how about you turn off the evil cyclone, and we can discuss your tourist visa application like civilized people?" "The Torto," Emperor laughed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "Your world has already shown me its vulnerabilities, Stark. The storm above is merely the beginning." As if to punctuate his statement, the vortex above intensified, the greenish lightning striking at random across the city. With each strike, civilians below who were caught in the energy began to change, their eyes taking on a glazed, distant look before they turned on those around them with sudden violence. "Mind control," Strange muttered. "He's using the storm to affect civilians." "Crude, but effective," Palpatine confirmed. "The echo of your Mind Stone provides an excellent conduit for the dark side. Soon, thousands will bend to my will. Then millions." Tony fired another barrage of repulsor blasts, which Palpatine now sidestepped rather than tried to absorb. The Emperor countered with Force lightning, but this time Tony was ready, a specialized shield configuration forming on his left arm to catch and disperse the energy. "Friday, what's our play here?" Tony asked his AI. "The storm appears to be the primary transmission vector," Friday replied. "Disrupt the vortex, and the effect should cease." Strange nodded, already beginning the gestures for a powerful banishment spell. "Cover me. I need 30 seconds. "You got it, Doc," Tony said, launching himself toward Palpatine in a direct frontal assault. The Emperor met the attack with lightsaber drawn, the crimson blade slicing through the air with deadly precision. Though Tony's armor was among the most advanced on Earth, the lightsaber cut through the nanites with frightening ease, forcing him to constantly reconfigure and adapt, sacrificing portions of the suit to preserve critical systems. "Your technology is impressive," Palpatine acknowledged as they fought, "but ultimately limited by your understanding of the universe." "Funny," Tony replied, firing micro-missiles that Palpatine batted away with casual flicks of his lightsaber. "I was about to say the same thing about your glow stick." The Emperor's eyes narrowed at the disrespect. He extended his hand, and Tony felt the nanites of his suit begin to respond to an external influence, fighting his control. Your machines are still bound by the fundamental forces of your universe, Palpatine said. Forces that bend to my will. Inside the armor, warnings blared as systems began to fail, the nanites comprising Tony's suit vibrating at frequencies that threatened to tear the entire structure apart. He poured more power into the stabilization systems, but the attack was coming from a direction his technology wasn't designed to defend against. Boss, structural integrity failing, Friday warned. 90 seconds to catastrophic system failure. Behind them, Strange completed his spell, thrusting his hands skyward. Mandalas of mystical energy expanded outward, racing toward the vortex above. For a moment, it seemed to work, the unnatural storm faltering as mystical energy disrupted its pattern. But then Palpatine raised his free hand without even looking away from Tony, and the dark side surged in response. The vortex not only stabilized but intensified, the mystical energy Strange had sent to disrupt it now feeding back into the storm, corrupted and twisted by the Emperor's power. The feedback hit Strange like a physical blow, sending him staggering backward as blood trickled from his nose. "You still don't understand what you're facing," Palpatine said, satisfaction evident in his voice. "Your magic, your technology, they are but expressions of the same universal energy. And all energy is subject to the Force." With a gesture, he sent Tony flying backward, the armor sparking and failing in crucial areas. The nanites struggled to maintain cohesion as Palpatine systematically attacked the very principles that allowed them to function as a unified system. Strange tried a different approach, opening a portal directly behind Palpatine that would send him into the mirror dimension. But the Emperor sensed the disturbance in reality and spun with inhuman speed, thrusting his lightsaber into the forming portal. The blade disrupted the dimensional gateway, causing it to collapse in a shower of sparks that forced Strange to shield his face. "A valiant effort, sorcerer," Palpatine said, "but futile." He reached out through the Force, seizing Strange by the throat and lifting him from the ground. "I can sense your connection to these dimensional energies. The knowledge you possess, you will serve as an excellent guide to the mystical aspects of this world." Strange struggled against the invisible grip, his hands unable to form the gestures necessary for spellcasting as his windpipe was slowly crushed. His vision began to darken at the edges, the cloak of levitation thrashing helplessly against a power it couldn't fight. "Hey, Emperor Creepy!" The voice came from behind, accompanied by the distinctive thwip of webbing. Spider-Man swung onto the scene, landing in a crouch several yards away. "Let him go, or things are gonna get sticky real fast." Palpatine turned his head slightly, regarding this new arrival with mild curiosity. "Another of this world's champions? You seem younger than the others." "Yeah, well, age is just a number," Peter quipped, though his voice betrayed his nervousness. He had felt the wrongness of this enemy from blocks away, his spider sense screaming in ways he had never experienced before. The Emperor smiled coldly. "Indeed it is, young one, and power recognizes power, regardless of its vessel." He released Strange, who fell to the ground gasping for air, and turned his full attention to Spider-Man. "I can sense your potential. The connection you have to the energies of this world is different from the others, more instinctual." Peter's spider sense flared to near painful levels as Palpatine extended a hand toward him. He leaped instinctively, barely avoiding a surge of Force energy that cracked the routine concrete where he had been standing. In midair, he fired multiple web shots, aiming for the Emperor's hands and feet to immobilize him. Palpatine didn't bother to dodge. The webbing stopped inches from his body, suspended in the air before disintegrating into dust that scattered on the wind. "Impressive reflexes," he noted. "Your instincts serve you well." Peter landed in a defensive crouch, his mind racing. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for an enemy who could neutralize his attacks without even moving. "Karen," he whispered to his suit's AI, "what am I dealing with here?" "Unknown, Peter," Karen replied. His energy signature doesn't match any recorded entity in the database. Palpatine advanced slowly, lightsaber humming at his side. You fear me, young one. Good. Fear is the beginning of wisdom, and for those who embrace it, the path to true power. Peter backed away, firing more webs at the surrounding structures, creating a complex network of strands that would allow him greater mobility. Thanks for the evil fortune cookie wisdom, but I'm gonna have to pass on the whole fear leads to power thing. Kind of goes against the friendly neighborhood ethos. The Emperor's expression hardened. Then you will learn through suffering. He thrust his hand forward, and Peter's world exploded into pain. Unlike the lightning he had used against the others, this attack struck directly at Peter's mind, exploiting the very sensitivity that powered his spider sense. The young hero fell to his knees, hands clutching his head as every nerve ending seemed to fire simultaneously. Your mind is open to sensations others cannot perceive, Palpatine observed, circling him predatorily. A gift in combat, but a vulnerability to one who can manipulate such perceptions. Through the haze of agony, Peter saw Tony struggling to his feet, the damaged Iron Man armor reconfiguring itself around him. Strange, too, was recovering, blood still trickling from his nose as he began, weaving a new spell. They needed time. They needed a distraction. With tremendous effort, Peter forced himself to move, firing a web directly at Palpatine's face. The Emperor deflected it easily, but the moment's distraction was enough for Peter to launch himself forward in a desperate tackle. They both went down, rolling across the rooftop in a tangle of limbs. Palpatine snarled in irritation, unused to such direct physical confrontation. Before he could bring the force to bear, Peter had struck him with 3 rapid blows, enhanced strength behind each punch. The Emperor tasted blood in his mouth, his yellow eyes widening in surprise at the young hero's audacity. That was for Dr. Strange, Peter said, flipping away from a slash of the lightsaber that came perilously close to separating his head from his shoulders. The Emperor rose, rage contorting his features. You will regret that, child. He unleashed a barrage of force lightning that Peter barely avoided, his enhanced agility pushed to its limits. One bolt caught him in the shoulder, sending him spinning through the air with a cry of pain. But the distraction had served its purpose. Behind Palpatine, Strange had completed his spell, and this time he wasn't aiming at the storm. Golden bands of mystical energy erupted from the ground around the Emperor, binding him in place. Unlike the earlier crimson bands, these were anchored directly to the fabric of reality itself through the power of the 3 sanctums, drawing on Earth's own mystical defenses. Palpatine strained against the restraints, his face contorted with effort. The bands held, but began to smolder where they touched him, the conflicting energies creating a dangerous resonance. Now, Tony, Strange called. Iron Man, his armor reconfigured into a more streamlined form that prioritized the arc reactor and primary weapons systems, raised both hands toward the immobilized Emperor. From his palms erupted not standard repulsor beams, but concentrated streams of energy that pulsed with the distinctive signature of the Power Stone's echo. This is proprietary tech based on readings from the Power Stone, Tony explained as the beams struck Palpatine, driving him to one knee despite the mystical restraints. Specifically designed to counter extra-dimensional energy patterns. Call it my cosmic equalizer. The Emperor growled in pain and defiance as the combined assault of magic and advanced technology pinned him in place. For the first time since his arrival, he appeared genuinely challenged, his confidence replaced by rising anger. You think your parlor tricks can contain me? He gasped, yellow eyes blazing with hatred. I am Darth Sidious. I am the Sith. With a roar of effort, he channeled the dark side as never before in this reality, drawing not only on his own considerable power, but on the fear and chaos he had already sown throughout the city below. The mystical bands began to crack, golden energy splintering as the Force worked against it from within. Strange, whatever you're planning, do it fast, Tony called, pouring more power into his attack. My systems are redlining here. The Sorcerer Supreme nodded grimly, producing a familiar circular gesture with his right hand. A portal began to open beside Palpatine, but unlike his previous attempts, this one shimmered with unstable energy, its edges fluctuating wildly. "What are you doing?" Peter asked, limping back into the fight despite his injuries. "Creating a one-way path to the dark dimension," Strange replied, sweat beading on his forehead from the effort. "It's the only realm I know that might be able to contain him." The portal widened, revealing glimpses of a nightmarish landscape beyond, where physics seemed optional and colors existed that had no name in human language. The air around it grew heavy and charged, reality itself protesting the unnatural gateway. Palpatine, seeing the danger, redoubled his efforts. With a final surge of the dark side, he shattered the mystical restraints, fragments of golden energy scattering like glass. Tony's beams still held him partially in place, but the Emperor raised his hands, fingers curled like claws as he fought back with force lightning that traveled up the energy beams toward their source. "Friday, reroute all power to containment," Tony shouted as warnings blared inside his helmet. The lightning reached his gauntlets, causing the nanites to short-circuit and begin to fail. The portal was nearly complete now, its pull beginning to affect the physical world as loose debris skittered across the rooftop toward the dimensional gateway. Palpatine dug his heels in, using the Force to anchor himself against the growing suction. "You fool," he spat at Strange. "You invite powers beyond your comprehension. The entities that dwell in such realms will not be content to remain there once they sense a path to your world." Strange's expression remained resolute, though his hands trembled from the strain of maintaining the unstable portal. "Better to face a known quantity than allow you to corrupt our reality further." The Emperor laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the howling energies around them. "Corrupt? I bring order to chaos, sorcerer. I bring purpose to pointless freedom. Ask yourself this. After all the threats your world has faced, after all the destruction wrought by those with power, does humanity not yearn for a firm hand to guide it?" His words carried an unnatural weight, the Force behind them seeking purchase in Strange's mind. The sorcerer faltered momentarily, the portal wavering as doubt crept in unbidden. Palpatine pressed his advantage, both physical and psychological. "I have seen into the minds of your people. They are tired of living in fear of the next invasion, the next world-ending catastrophe. They do not trust their heroes anymore, not after Sokovia, not after Thanos. They crave security above all else." "Don't listen to him, Doc," Tony called, his systems failing as the Emperor's lightning continued to overwhelm his defenses. "He's playing mind games." But Palpatine's words had found their mark, exploiting the very real doubts that had haunted Strange since taking up the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme. The responsibility of protecting reality itself, the knowledge that his actions or inactions could doom countless lives. The portal flickered dangerously, its edges beginning to collapse. Peter, seeing the situation deteriorating, made a decision. Despite his injuries, despite the fear that coursed through him, he launched himself directly at Palpatine, tackling the Sith Lord toward the unstable portal. "No," Strange shouted, realizing Peter's intent. The Emperor snarled in fury as they tumbled toward the dimensional gateway, his lightsaber activating in a flash of crimson. Peter twisted in midair, avoiding a strike that would have bisected him, but the movement cost him his advantage. Palpatine seized him with the Force, suspending him in the air mere feet from the portal's maw. "Brave but foolish, young one," the Emperor said, voice cutting through the maelstrom of energies around them. "You would sacrifice yourself to save your world? Such nobility, such waste." With contemptuous ease, he hurled Peter aside, the young hero crashing into Tony and sending them both sprawling. Palpatine turned back to the portal, studying it with newfound interest rather than fear. "A realm of darkness, you say? Perhaps it is not I who should fear such a place, but rather its denizens who should fear me." Before anyone could react, he thrust his hands into the portal itself, fingers sinking into the very fabric of the dimensional barrier. Strange cried out in alarm as the Emperor began to manipulate the gateway from within, his mastery of the Force allowing him to twist the mystical energies to his own purpose. The portal's color shifted, the nameless hues of the dark dimension bleeding away, replaced by a deep, malevolent red. The pull of the gateway reversed, no longer drawing things in but rather pushing outward, a pressure against reality itself. "What's happening?" Tony demanded, helping Peter to his feet. Strange's face had gone pale. "He's reconfiguring the portal, changing its destination." "To where?" Peter asked, the feeling of wrongness intensifying through his spider sense. "I don't know," Strange admitted. "But somewhere beyond the mapped dimensions of the multiverse." Palpatine turned back to them, a triumphant smile on his ravaged face. "You sought to banish me, sorcerer. Instead, you have provided me with a path to bring true power to this reality." The modified portal pulsed behind him, its red glow casting his features in bloodlight. From within its depths, a low humming sound emerged, growing in volume and dissonance until it seemed to vibrate through the bones of all present. "What you hear is the song of Kyber," the Emperor explained. "The cry of crystals that focus the part of Bednozer, Force itself. In my reality, they power weapons capable of destroying worlds. Imagine what they might achieve here, in a universe so ripe with different energies to harness." Tony struggled to his feet, his armor barely functional. "Friday, give me options." "Limited, boss," the AI replied. "Power reserves at 12% and falling. The portal is emitting energy signatures that are disrupting the nanites' cohesion." Strange was already attempting a counterspell, trying to wrest control of the portal back from Palpatine. But the Emperor's connection to it was unlike anything he had encountered, operating on principles that defied the very foundations of mystical practice as he understood them. "Your magic relies on structure, on ancient knowledge passed down through generations," Palpatine observed, almost conversationally, as he easily countered Strange's efforts. "The Force flows through all living things, through existence itself. It does not require incantations or gestures, only will." To demonstrate, he seized Strange with the Force once more, lifting him from the ground and suspending him spread-eagle in mid-air. "The universe you know is but one expression of reality, sorcerer. There are others, each with their own laws, their own powers. The Force transcends them all." Behind him, the portal continued to widen, the humming growing louder. Flashes of light began to appear within its depths, as if something was approaching from the other side. Peter turned to Tony, desperation clear in his voice even through the mask. "We have to close that portal before whatever's coming gets through." Tony nodded grimly. "Got any bright ideas?" "Because I'm running on fumes here." The young hero looked around frantically, his mind racing. The storm above was still raging, the civilians below still affected by Palpatine's influence. Strange was incapacitated, Iron Man was nearly depleted. The situation seemed hopeless. Then Peter's eyes fell on Palpatine himself, specifically the lightsaber at his belt, the weapon that had cut through Tony's advanced armor like it was paper, the blade that disrupted Strange's magic on contact. "I think I do," he said quietly. "But you're not going to like it." Without waiting for a response, Peter fired 2 web lines simultaneously. One attached to Strange, the other to the base of the portal itself, where Palpatine's manipulations had weakened the dimensional boundary. With all his enhanced strength, he pulled, yanking Strange free from the Emperor's Force grip while simultaneously stressing the already unstable portal's anchor point. Palpatine turned with a snarl, lightsaber igniting as he prepared to cut down this persistent annoyance once and for all. But the momentary distraction was all Tony needed. With his remaining power, he launched himself directly at the Emperor, tackling him with such force that they both tumbled toward the destabilized portal. "Tony, no!" Strange shouted, regaining his senses in time to see what was happening. Iron Man's faceplate retracted, revealing Tony's determined expression. "Close it, Doc," he called, struggling to hold Palpatine as they teetered on the edge of the dimensional gateway. Close it now. The Emperor fought with inhuman strength, the Force augmenting his physical capabilities as he struggled against Tony's grasp. The lightsaber hummed dangerously close to the armor's already compromised integrity. "You would sacrifice yourself?" Palpatine hissed, yellow eyes boring into Tony's. "For a world that has taken you for granted? That has vilified you as often as celebrated you?" Tony's grip tightened. "Yeah, well, that's the hero gig. No one ever said it came with a 401k. Strange began the gestures to close the portal, tears streaming unbidden down his face at the choice being forced upon him. Peter stood frozen, the enormity of what was happening rendering him momentarily immobile. "Wait!" he cried, firing a web line toward Tony. "Mr. Stark." But it was too late. With a final surge of effort, Tony activated his remaining thrusters, propelling both himself and Palpatine through the portal just as Strange's spell began to collapse it. The last thing they saw was the Emperor's face, twisted in rage and disbelief, and Tony's small, sad smile of acceptance. The portal closed with a thunderclap of imploding energy, the shockwave knocking both Strange and Peter off their feet. Above, the unnatural storm dissipated almost instantly, green lightning fading into normal clouds that began to disperse. Below, affected civilians stopped in confusion. The influence that had gripped their minds suddenly severed. For a long moment, silence reigned on the rooftop, broken only by the distant sounds of the city slowly returning to normal. Then Peter spoke, his voice small and hollow beneath the mask. "He's gone. Mr. Stark is gone." Strange sat heavily, exhaustion and grief etching deep lines in his face. "He made his choice, Peter. A choice to protect this reality, whatever the cost." "We have to get him back," Peter insisted, voice cracking. "Wherever that portal led, we have to find a way to reach it." The sorcerer shook his head slowly. "That portal doesn't lead anywhere in our multiverse, Peter. Palpatine altered it to connect to whatever reality he came from. A place beyond the mapped dimensions, operating under different fundamental laws." "So what, we just give up?" Peter demanded, anger rising through his grief. "After everything Mr. Stark has done, we just leave him there with that monster?" Strange looked up, his expression haunted. "No, we prepare. Because if there's one thing I'm certain of, it's that we haven't seen the last of either of them." Miles away, in the new Avengers facility, the remaining team members received the news of Tony's sacrifice with shocked silence. Sam Wilson, still holding the shield that represented a legacy of sacrifice, bowed his head. Bucky Barnes, who had seen too many good men lost to war, turned away, his mechanical arm whirring softly as his fist clenched. Wanda Maximoff, who had already lost too much, let tears fall freely. And across the city, the world, the universe, reality itself seemed to hold its breath as if recognizing the fundamental shift that had occurred. A hero lost, a barrier between worlds breached, and somewhere beyond the known dimensions, an emperor of darkness and a man of iron hurtled toward a galaxy far, far away. Their conflict now transcending the boundaries of their respective realities. The threat had been averted, but at terrible cost. And in the silence that followed victory, the whispers of doubt that Palpatine had planted began to take root. How many more sacrifices would be demanded? How many more heroes lost? And when the Emperor inevitably found his way back as beings of such power always did, would they be ready? Dr. Strange stood at the window of the Sanctum Sanctorum, watching as New York recovered from yet another brush with annihilation. His hands, always his weakness, trembled more than usual as he contemplated the new responsibility that had fallen to him, to understand a power from beyond the multiverse, to prepare defenses against an enemy who operated by different rules. "The Force," he murmured, testing the word. It felt strange on his tongue, alien yet somehow familiar. A power that bound all things, that flowed through existence itself. Not so different from the mystic energies he wielded, perhaps, but fundamentally altered by originating in a reality with different natural laws. Behind him, Wong placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We will find a way, Stephen. We always do." Strange nodded, though the weight of doubt still pressed heavily upon him. "He knew our weaknesses, Wong. Not just our physical limitations, but our doubts, our fears. It was as if he could see right into our minds. Then we must learn to guard not just our reality, but our thoughts as well," Wong replied with characteristic practicality. The Sorcerer Supreme turned from the window, his decision made. "Gather the masters from all three sanctums. We need to establish new protocols, new defenses. And I need access to the forbidden texts in the Mirror Dimension archive." Wong's eyes widened. "Those texts were sealed away for good reason, Stephen." "I know," Strange agreed grimly, "but we're facing an enemy who doesn't play by our rules. It's time we expanded our understanding of the multiverse and beyond." As the two sorcerers departed to begin preparations, they remained unaware of the subtle changes already spreading throughout their reality. In the wake of Palpatine's brief presence, the very fabric of existence had been altered in ways too small to detect, but too significant to ignore. Across the globe, individuals with latent psychic abilities found those talents suddenly heightened, as if a door previously closed had been forced ajar. Dreams became more vivid, intuition sharper, and in some cases, new and frightening capabilities began to manifest. In a small apartment in Queens, May Parker tended to her nephew's injuries, grateful that he had survived yet another world-threatening event, yet worried about the hollow look in his eyes following Tony Stark's sacrifice. "He's gone because of me," Peter said quietly, wincing as she cleaned a particularly nasty burn on his shoulder. "If I hadn't destabilized the portal." "You did what you had to do," May assured him, though her heart ached at the burden he carried. "Tony made his choice. That's not on you." Peter didn't respond, his mind replaying those final moments over and over. The determined look on Tony's face, the rage in Palpatine's yellow eyes, the sensation of wrongness that had permeated his spider sense from the moment the Emperor had arrived, and beneath it all, a new awareness that he couldn't quite name, a sensitivity to the world around him that went beyond his enhanced senses or spider instincts. As if he could feel the connections between things, the invisible threads that bound all existence together. Elsewhere, in the hidden chamber beneath Kamar Taj where the most dangerous artifacts were secured, a subtle change went unnoticed by the mystic guardians. The remnants of the Time Stone, mere dust after Thanos' destruction of the Infinity Stones, began to pulse with renewed energy. Not the familiar green glow of temporal power, but a faint, reddish illumination that ebbed and flowed like a heartbeat. The echo of the Force, introduced to this reality by Palpatine's presence, had found resonance with the remains of powers that had once shaped the very foundations of existence. A convergence of energies from different realities, intermingling in ways that defied prediction or control. And in the vast emptiness between dimensions, where time and space held no meaning, the essence of what had once been the Emperor drifted, formless now, his physical body destroyed in the collapse of the portal, but his consciousness preserved through the dark side of the Force. Patient, calculating, waiting for the opportunity to influence events once more, for the dark side was patient. It could afford to wait decades, centuries, millennia, if necessary. And it had found new vessels to corrupt, new powers to exploit, new realities to dominate. In the silence of meditation, Dr. Strange suddenly gasped, his astral form momentarily perceiving something beyond the limits of normal consciousness. A presence, vast and malevolent, watching from outside reality itself, waiting, planning. A cold certainty settled in his gut as the vision faded. This was not the end. It was merely the beginning of a conflict that would span realities and reshape the very nature of existence itself. A war between the Force and the fundamental powers of their universe. Between darkness and light. Between order and freedom. The Emperor had been banished, but his influence remained. And somewhere beyond the known dimensions, Tony Stark faced an enemy unlike any he had encountered before, armed only with his genius and what remained of his damaged armor. The outcome of that confrontation would determine not just the fate of two men, but potentially the future of two universes. The battle for reality itself had only just begun,